I'm Valerie. Standing in front of the Capitol steps, holding a manila envelope in my hand, I'm lost in thought. Just now, my sister, Lily, came to me. She said she was getting help and thanked me for not ruining her. It's a moment I never expected, yet it feels like a long-awaited closure. Let me take you back to that fateful day in the courtroom. The place was packed. Lily sat there in a prim blouse, feigning innocence. My mother, Mrs. Thompson, clutched her designer purse tightly, whispering under her breath that everything would be okay. And there I was, sitting alone in the last row, hands folded, my jaw set. I had no intention of speaking, I was just there to watch them. The same family who had labeled me as dramatic, ungrateful, and invisible. The judge, Judge Harris, a man in his late 50s, with a serious face that remained unfazed even in the most heinous of cases, entered the room. He skimmed through the file, his glasses perched low on his nose. Then he paused, looked up, and scanned the room. His eyes landed on me and stayed there. He squinted, then leaned slightly towards the microphone and said in a voice that shattered the silence, "Wait, dear Governor Valerie Thompson." The courtroom fell deathly silent. Lily's lawyer stammered, the court clerk dropped his pen, and even the bailiff turned to look. My mother's face turned as pale as a sheet. I didn't stand up, I didn't smile. I just looked at the judge and nodded once. He immediately straightened his posture and said, "We're done here. This case is no longer being handled the way your family expected because the daughter they labeled a failure, the one they never invited, never supported, never respected, is the most powerful person in this room." Suddenly, the air in the courtroom changed. It was charged with electricity, as if everyone had just realized they were standing too close to a thunderstorm. The judge cleared his throat and said he needed a brief recess. What he really meant was, what on earth is she doing here? Governors don't just show up at routine DUI cases, especially not without security, staff, or an announcement. But I didn't come as a governor, I came as the daughter they had thrown away, the sister they had used as a contrast, the woman who had been told time and time again, "You're not one of us." I watched as my mother leaned towards Lily and hissed through clenched teeth, "You didn't tell me she was coming." Lily didn't reply. She just kept her eyes on the floor, probably remembering all the times she had mocked my political campaigns behind my back. At every Thanksgiving, she would toast to her new job while I sat in silence after working 80-hour weeks as a public servant. They thought I'd never make it past the local council. They said I was boring, cold, and too serious. But I knew that cold girls climb quietly, and when they reach the top, they make decisions. During the recess, Judge Harris walked over to me. He took off his glasses and said, "Governor, I had no idea. If I had known." I stopped him gently. "I'm not here in any official capacity. I'm just observing." He nodded, but I could tell from his expression that this case had suddenly become a career liability for him. Before the hearing resumed, whispers filled the hallway. Reporters were there, law clerks pretended not to stare, and even the opposing counsel leaned in and asked my mother, "Is that the Governor Thompson?" She didn't answer because how could she explain disowning a daughter only to watch her become the most powerful name on the docket? I sat there, quiet and unapologetic. I didn't come to flaunt my power, I came to remind them that I was power. When the court resumed, the atmosphere was completely different. No one could look me in the eye. The judge returned to the bench, suddenly cautious and measured. He read through the file as if it were radioactive. Lily sat up straighter, and her lawyer whispered furiously in her ear. My mother remained frozen, pale, and still clutching that purse as if it held the answer to all their problems. The judge finally looked up and said, "This case is being reassigned. Effective immediately. I will not be proceeding further due to a conflict of interest." In other words, he didn't want the fallout. He knew this was no longer just a DUI hearing, it was now attached to my name. Lily finally opened her mouth and said, "Valerie, please." I turned to her slowly and said, "Now you remember my name." Silence filled the room. That's what guilt sounds like when it finally recognizes the person it tried to erase. I stood up, didn't storm out, and didn't gloat. I simply turned to the bailiff and said, "I'm done observing." Then I walked straight down the aisle, with every pair of eyes following me, including the ones that had looked away when I needed them the most. Outside the courtroom, the press was waiting. Microphones were thrust in my face, cameras flashed, and a whirlwind of questions came my way. "Governor Thompson, are you involved in this case? Is there a personal connection to the defendant? Can you confirm if the woman on trial is your sister?" I didn't flinch, didn't run, and didn't hide. I looked one reporter square in the eyes and said calmly, "I was attending as a private citizen." No further comment. Then I walked straight through the crowd, just like I always had. Back in the car, my phone lit up with missed calls. Mom had called 3 times, Lily 8 times, and there were 12 unknown numbers. I could feel them spiraling, but I didn't pick up. Instead, I told my driver to take me to the state office because I had a meeting to lead on education reform, a system my mother had once said I wasn't smart enough to understand. And now, I was rewriting it. That night, alone in my apartment, I finally opened Lily's texts. "Valerie, I'm sorry. You could have helped me. You could have warned me. I thought about all the years I had been treated like the family embarrassment. I had turned shame into strategy. While they threw parties for Lily's failed business ventures, I had been in war rooms, working on policies to improve the lives of the less fortunate." I replied, "You had their protection. I had their silence. You were raised to believe the world owed you grace. I was raised to believe I owed it to everyone else. Now we're both grown women, and this time, I choose me." The next morning, headlines hit every news feed. Governor Valerie Thompson attends sister's trial. Legal system shaken. Family drama at the bench. Thompson's silent message echoes louder than words. They didn't have the full story, but they didn't need it. The photo of me standing quietly in the courtroom, my mother frozen in shock, Lily turning towards me, and the judge rising from his seat said it all. That afternoon, I received a call from a blocked number. Out of curiosity, I answered. It was my mother. Her voice was brittle, polite, and exhausted. "Valerie, I didn't know. I didn't know how far you'd come. Your father and I thought you were just avoiding us." I stayed quiet as she went on, "Your sister is in real trouble. They're talking about revoking her license permanently. She might do jail time. You could help. Just say something." I looked out of my office window at the Capitol lawn below, clean, quiet, and controlled, and said, "You called me a failure for years, and now that I've succeeded without your support, you want me to erase the consequences of your favorite's choices." Mom whispered, "She's your sister." I said gently, "She was your golden girl. Now she's just an adult with a record." Then I ended the call. No yelling, no grand declarations, just the truth. Later that night, I received an email from Judge Harris. He explained that the new handling judge had no intention of leniency and thanked me for maintaining neutrality. He closed by saying, "What your presence did in that room will be studied in law schools. Not because of what you said, but because of how many people finally listened." For the first time, I believed it. My silence was louder than all their years of noise. By the end of the week, Lily's sentence was finalized. Her license was revoked, she was put on probation, and fines were stacked. Her lawyer started asking for character witnesses, and that's when they called in favors. Aunt Rose, always the family mediator, reached out to me. "Valerie, sweetheart, your mother is devastated. Your sister is humiliated. Isn't that enough?" I thought about all the times they had whispered behind my back at holiday dinners, when I got into grad school and Mom told everyone it was just a phase, and when they called me cold and career-obsessed because I wasn't smiling for their applause. I said, "No, Aunt Rose. This isn't about humiliation. It's about accountability. Lily didn't just have a drinking problem, she had an entitlement problem fueled by a family who never held her to the same standard they buried me beneath. That night, I was sitting with my chief of staff, reviewing policy briefs. Midway through, she looked at me and asked, "Governor, are you okay?" I paused and realized that, for the first time in my life, I was okay. I wasn't fighting to be seen anymore. I was watching the same people who had told me I'd never amount to anything suddenly whisper my name with caution. I closed my laptop and said, "I'm more than okay. I'm free." A month later, I hosted a policy summit in D.C. Senators, governors, federal judges, and even international observers gathered in the East Hall of the Capitol. I stood at the podium, wearing a flawless navy suit, my notes untouched because the story I carried didn't need a script. I spoke about systemic privilege, accountability, and how consequences don't discriminate, but people do. I didn't name names, but those who had read the headlines knew exactly who I was referencing, and those who hadn't still felt the impact. After the summit, I was mingling politely, posing for photos, and shaking hands when a soft voice stopped me. "Governor Thompson." I turned around. It was Judge Harris. He extended his hand and said, "May I say what you did that day? You didn't say a word, and yet you still taught us all something." I smiled and said, "Silence is a language. You just have to decide who deserves to understand it." He chuckled, nodded, and walked away. And then, the summit coordinator handed me a note. "There's someone waiting downstairs. Says it's personal." I raised an eyebrow, but I already knew. I walked past the marble columns and out into the golden dusk. And there she was, Lily. No makeup, her hair pulled back for once. No performance. She stepped forward cautiously, clutching that manila envelope. She said, "I'm not here to beg. I just wanted to say thank you for not ruining me. You could have destroyed everything." I tilted my head and said, "You were already doing that." She looked down and said, "I'm getting help. I'm trying." I didn't hug her or comfort her, but I didn't turn away either. I said, "Then don't try for me. Try for the person you become when no one's watching. That's who matters now." She nodded, her eyes glossy, and handed me the envelope. Back home, I placed the envelope on my kitchen counter. I didn't rush to open it, I just watched it as if it might still bite. That night, sitting by the window with a cup of chamomile tea, no guards, no cameras, no headlines, just me, I finally opened it. Inside were old photos of Lily and me as kids, laughing in the backyard sprinkler, Dad grilling, and Mom pretending to care. There was one photo of me in oversized glasses, holding a science fair ribbon, standing alone. No one was clapping, not even them. And yet, I was smiling. Even back then, I knew how to celebrate myself. I stood up and framed that science fair photo right next to my framed inauguration photo. 2 girls stared back at me, one invisible, one undeniable, and both me. The next morning, I declined a call from my mother and then blocked her number. Not out of anger, but because healing isn't about revenge. It's about choosing who still gets access to your peace. Lily's story wasn't mine to clean up, and my silence wasn't punishment, it was closure. I had written myself into history, not with a scream or a crown, but with quiet, focused power, and I was a reminder to every forgotten daughter, you don't need their seat at the table. When the time comes, you build your own.